BTB listeners, thank you so much for checking out today's episode. Listen, if this episode inspires you, do me a favor, take 5 seconds to shoot me a like and subscribe to the podcast. There are several more exciting guests that are in the pipeline, and I just can't thank you enough for your continued support, and let's keep paying the mission forward. In today's episode, I interview Kalyssa Hall. Our conversation allows us to walk through her journey, and we get to a moment where she had to play one of the most difficult tennis matches of her life, of which ended up in a loss. But in that moment, that loss, she learned more about herself, learned how to persevere and overcome her true mission and calling in life, and being able to pay that forward to help others. I had an opportunity over this last year when I was brave enough to decide to do a podcast, to have incredible conversations with incredible people that I've come across in my life. And today's guest is a 2-time high school state champion from Colorado, goes on and plays Division I college tennis for the Gophers of Minnesota. But more importantly, she has one of the most compassionate hearts and wanting to give back to people in ways that I honestly could have never imagined. It's these types of moments that I know you as a listener will appreciate. I'm excited to dive into the story of one of the Colorado tennis greats, Miss Kalyssa Hall. Welcome to the BTB project.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. I know that you have a lot of moving parts in your life currently, tackling the world of finance, and I'd love for you to maybe start by catching up the listeners to what is a day in the life of Kalyssa Hall, post-grad and post-tennis. What are you up to these days?
Well, I'm currently working for a pharmaceutical company called Halozyme. I'm a staff accountant for them. So just a lot of your basic day-to-day accounting, working on the books. And then I'm also a part-time wedding planner.
Nice.
I really enjoy it. I do that on the weekends, and it's not a ton of work, but it's really fun and it gets my creative juices flowing. And I've been coaching a little bit of tennis. I was coaching at a country club here this past summer. So gonna try and keep that up going forward as well.
So I'm taking notes here myself because I have a niece who's actually getting married in July. And I
Oh
would
yeah?
love, based off of being a wedding planner, what about wedding planning excites you the most when you're helping people?
I think the biggest thing for me personally is getting to be a part of someone's most special day. Every single person that gets married, it's one of the most important days of their lives. Being a coordinator and being able to make sure that everything goes super smoothly so that the bride and groom aren't worried about anything that day, and they know and they trust us to fully make sure it happens seamlessly is really exciting and cool for me. Just getting to make one of their most special days of their lives just that much better is just really fulfilling to me, to be able to help them out in that way and make sure that things go correctly.
Absolutely. And when it comes to you and I mean, obviously, Colorado tennis is a very small world. And I remember a time and a place to where I was able to come down being a Denver metro area guy that was fresh off of my college tennis experience and getting into the realm of coaching and trying to give back to folks. And it eventually led me to having some moments in Colorado Springs.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to me because I remember vividly a moment that was one of the most humbling moments in my coaching career, to where I'm at the Country Club of Colorado, and a lady by the name of Dana Aronson, who had a couple daughters that played with
Yeah.
you at Cheyenne Mountain, decided to have this open house for me. And I just remember that event. And just to make it a moment that's full circle, I'd be curious to know, do you remember that event? And do you remember when we really started to connect, both from a coaching point of view and what you were doing as a player at the time in Colorado Springs?
Yeah, I believe at that time I vaguely remember the open house, but I'm sure Dana put on a great event. So
No, and it's funny because I bring it up because what I realized was as a high school coach. So at the
Hmm.
time, yes, I had worked with Jeff. I was spending some time at Chatfield Senior High. That's when I started coaching high school tennis.
Yep.
I eventually got to Regis Jesuit as an assistant coach,
Hmm.
which is where I was able to tackle into 4A tennis and Cheyenne Mountain, Dave Adams,
Yep.
very real thing. And full transparency, as being a Colorado tennis player, that Cheyenne Mountain and Cherry Creek High School are two very predominant programs in the state.
Yes.
And I remember being immersed in a lot of great Cheyenne Mountain tennis players. And it makes me think of you and obviously your sister and the Aronson family and many others. But I'd love for you to share what Cheyenne Mountain tennis meant to you and that development to get to the high school scene, get to that point to where you're playing high school tennis for a team that you probably looked up to when you were a junior.
Yeah, I think that for me, I grew up going to the Country Club of Colorado. That was where we did all of our swimming lessons when we were growing up. And then whenever I first decided that I was going to play tennis, I believe we were walking home from swimming to the car. And I saw the tennis courts and I asked my mom if I could do that. I don't know if you remember Jessica Metz,
Yes, I
but
do. Yes,
yeah,
Jessica Metz. Yep.
yes. So her dad was a tennis pro. I don't remember where they lived previously, but he had used to be a tennis pro. So then my mom and Jeannie, her mom, were best friends at the time because we had been growing up together. So then my mom put me and Jessica into lessons together. So then we started doing that together. She was always going to play tennis because of her dad, but I had asked if I could. So then my mom put me into it, and we just really didn't look back from there. I'd say I had some of the best fundamental training that I could have gotten at the country club just from a really young age. Like Ken Bartz was at the country club for forever.
Yeah.
And whatever, I would have private lessons with him when I was probably 6 or 7. And just he would go through so much of the fundamentals of tennis with me that I think I just learned a lot about the actual sport at such a young age. Almost like tennis theory. He would go through that stuff with me and how you were supposed to play, like how you were supposed to move with the ball, that kind of thing. So I think that really kickstarted my tennis career extremely well because I had someone who knows everything there is to know about tennis teaching me from the time that I was really little. And then obviously going into an area where Cheyenne Mountain has an incredible tennis program. It has always had an incredible tennis program. I think a lot of that is owed to obviously Dave Adams and Rich Hill have done a lot for that program. But being in a community where tennis is cool was also a really big thing for me, I think, growing up, where a lot of people play tennis. And I think that sometimes tennis can be seen as just a different sport. But where I grew up and in Colorado and a little bit in Denver too, it's just a little bit, especially in Colorado Springs, it was a little bit more of something cool to do rather because there were so many of us that did it from a young age. So when I was then growing up, so then I was 9 and 10, then I would start to see the high school tennis players playing when I wanted to play them. And then we'd have our local designated tournaments and I would play in a higher level. So I'd play in the 16s whenever I was 12. And then I got to play some of those high school tennis players that were number one singles whenever I was still in elementary school and junior high. And I just thought it was the coolest thing ever to get to play these girls who were winning state every year. By the time that I got there, it was just a really important moment for me. I mean, I was committed to the fact that I was going to play high school tennis from day one. I wanted to play on that team. It was really hard for me in junior high and elementary school when all my friends could start playing team sports. I didn't really have the time to be able to play on the junior high volleyball team or play on the junior high basketball team. So I think that it was really important to me that I finally got to go out and do something for my school and actually feel like I was contributing and a part of a team, which then progressed my career into high school tennis and then later college tennis.
No, I love that. And It's interesting for me because where I grew up in Parker, Colorado, I played at
Mhm.
Ponderosa High School. I knew of Colorado Springs because some of my first tournaments that I played was like a Linmar Racket Club,
Yeah.
Country Club of Colorado,
Yeah.
those holiday season tournaments. And that's where my career began. But when it comes to Cheyenne Mountain, it's fascinating because that community, as you mentioned, being
Mhm.
cool to play tennis.
Yeah.
I can't believe how full circle it is for me because one of the guys that I looked up to when I was looking to play college tennis was a gentleman by the name of Brian Bishop,
Mhm.
whose dad was the director of tennis of Country Club of Colorado. And then
Mark Bishop?
well, yeah, Mark Bishop. Yeah, Mark
Yeah.
Bishop was
Oh my
Brian's
gosh.
dad. And then,
That's
Bart
amazing.
Scott had a
Yeah.
tremendous career and came from that area. So I put the puzzle pieces together, one from my playing career and being part of some of the lineage from Colorado Springs, but then
Mhm.
coaching when I was at Regis Jesuit and going down to the 4A tournament in Pueblo and
Yeah.
facing off against a Dave Adams and
Yep.
seeing a lot of maroon jackets there at the fences
Mhm.
and the bus. Like everything about it is this is a school that
Yeah.
absolutely loves their athletic programs.
Yes.
So as I say that, and we fast forward a little bit to not only one, but two state championships as a player, I'd love for you to walk the listeners through to that moment to where you took the courts as a participant of the team, knowing
Mhm.
how much the history meant to you,
Yeah.
to be able to get to a moment to where you're lifting that trophy at the end
Mhm.
of the weekend in Pueblo.
A lot of my success at Cheyenne Mountain just had to do with the amount of support that I had out of everyone that was a part of my tennis career at that point. Scott Leifer was my coach for a
Mm.
large part of my life, probably from 12 through 16. He was so committed to helping me make sure that I could play high school tennis because I would get off the World Arenas in Colorado Springs.
Yeah, it's
And
the Olympic training facility, right? Or
yes, and
yeah,
that's where all of the skaters go to get their ice time for the Olympic training facility.
gotcha. Yep.
So because of that, all of the skaters were able to get off early and not have to go to gym so they could get normal skate time, the times that were a little bit less busy. So because they were allowed to have the sports pass, my mom actually talked to the school and asked them what we needed to do to be able to get me a sports pass so that I could get court time at like at the times that it wasn't busy, so I could have free court time. I would get off at 1. I did online gym at the time. I would get off at 1. I would go, I would play with Scott from 1 until 3. My mom would pick me up and bring me back to play high school practice. And just having people that are fully committed to making sure you can succeed was a really important part
Mhm.
of that, where I'm getting my really good hitting hours with my coach and while I'm also able to be a part of that team. I wasn't sacrificing anything really at that point to be able to get the most that I could possibly get to be playing at the best of my capabilities. After going through that season, especially my freshman year season, and then finally being on this team, and then finally, whenever I first was #1 singles, I got that spot. I was just ecstatic. I was so excited to go and just play these matches and be able to start competing for Cheyenne Mountain because I've been thinking about this for 7 years at that point.
Wow.
I definitely, obviously, Dave and I were funny on the court, honestly, because I
There's
am
two strong personalities out there, right?
yes, yes. And I'm notoriously hard on myself. But even on the court, like no matter if I was in a tough match, Dave was 100% on the court with me. Like he was there, he was ready for like playing Nicole Calhorn, I was playing Becca Wiseman. Dave was right at the side of the fence, like ready to talk to me. And I think that just having that support and knowing that he was fully there to try and support me, not only to win state and be a part of his team, but to also support me in growing up and being a
Uh,
even better tennis player and
yeah.
like working. There's something to be said for having a coach on the court with you whenever you can't have that in USTA, and just having someone there to like bounce ideas off of during an actual match, which is something that you don't I never really got much. So I think by the time that I won that first state championship, I couldn't believe that it had actually happened. It was my goal. I remember my teammates ran onto the court and I started crying because I was just relieved that I had won. I was so nervous that I wasn't going to be able to do it. So I was relieved and just excited. And I played Megan Monahan in that first state final. And
Okay.
it was a great match. I think she was,
Denver South, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
she was a senior and I was a freshman. So I knew that I was a
Wow.
little bit of the underdog. And I had played her a lot in practices at Inverness. And so I knew that we were close. I knew that I could do it if I really played my best, but I think just having the support of the team and just having my parents and Scott was there and Dave was there. I think just having so much support and so many people telling me that I could do it was what really pulled me over the top to be able to say, "Oh, you're right. I think I got this." That kind of thing. But
So as you walk through that, it's just so telling to me. Here you are as a freshman,
mhm,
all right? And being 17 years into high school coaching, I've been able to come across a lot of freshmen that have a incredible amount of weight on their shoulders, not just with what they're trying to do athletically, but getting immersed into the social situations of high school, getting immersed into the academics.
mhm.
And I just would be so compelled to know when you're in that final against Megan Monahan, who's a senior,
Mhm.
and you felt that weight on your shoulders. At what point did you know you were going to win the match?
Honestly, at that point in my tennis career, I was playing well and I was confident in what I was able to do.
Mm,
I knew I could win the match if I played my best. I don't think that I was ever feeling as though it was an impossible feat. So when I got on the court, the things that I was focusing on wasn't really whether I was going to win the match or if I wasn't going to win the match, but I was focusing on all the things that my parents have gone through with me and my coaches have gone through with me that helped me play my best.
I love that because a lot of times it's the prerequisites of what we do before we take the court.
Yeah.
It's the mindset of visualizing and determining before the outcome even happens what the outcome could be.
Yeah.
And as we both know through a guy like Jeff Saldenstein, positive affirmations, being
Mhm.
able to affirm something before it happens gives a freshman and all of the status quos that you could put into the situation that could prevent you from winning a state championship, to have the pedigree, to have the confidence, and to trust that in the moment in a big match.
Mhm.
But I'm curious, like when you talk about your parents and your coaches, did you have this game plan in mind before you went into the match, or was it just a buildup of everything that helped you along the way to where you yourself had that confidence before you took the court?
Well, there was always really specific things for me that made me play my best. I was really lanky at that age, so I was tall and I was all over the place. If I wasn't moving my feet, I would just lean a lot trying
Mm.
to hit the ball. My number one thing when I got on the court was in the warm up, just like don't stop moving your feet. Just get out there and get your feet as active as you could possibly get them. Like that kind of thing. Or just little things like what I need to focus on my forehand, what I need to focus on my backhand, make sure I'm bending my knees on my serve, that kind of thing, where I wasn't focused as much on that's how you're going to win. But I was thinking of this is how I go and I play my best tennis because I knew that I was confident in my best tennis.
Mm.
I was 100% focused on making sure I played that.
Yeah. And a lot of times, and I'm sure we'll dive into this too later, but we tend to focus on our worst tennis.
Mm-hmm.
And for you to say that you're focusing on your best tennis, it's almost like you had so many variables that are important to have success in this game. And it makes me think of someone like a Becky Varnum, who
Mm-hmm.
was an OG at Cheyenne Mountain.
Yeah.
She won every match, didn't lose a
Yeah.
match,
Yeah.
Notre Dame All American.
Yeah.
When I
Incredible.
yeah, when I had conversations with her, being able to teach alongside her at Inverness, she is just a cool cat. Like she
Yeah.
just has this confidence and presence that how can someone teach that, Kalyssa? So as we get to the conclusion of your freshman year and go into your sophomore year, knowing that you won it once, what was it like for you to go into your sophomore year and getting back into that state championship match, knowing what you've been through and the confidence that you have?
Yeah.
I'm thinking out loud, who in the world is going to beat Kalyssa Hall in the state championships your sophomore year?
The way that I was playing at that point, I was so confident. I had finally found my place. I felt as a person, I was finding my place. Like I was able to be on a team. I was able to connect with people in my school over tennis. I was able to have these people that were automatically my friends because they were on my team. My best friend was actually on my team my freshman year. I was feeling so comfortable with myself and my life at that point, and I was so happy with that win. That whole next year of tennis was probably the best tennis I've ever played.
Mm.
I won the snowball sectional. I won the Easter circuit. I
Wow.
won summer sectionals and I won state. I think that I was just on such a high after that first win. I was 100% confident that if I played my best, I could do it. And I wasn't thinking about the outcome if I lost. I was thinking more about playing my best. I will admit, in that state final, I got pretty nervous at the end. It was a pretty close second set. I played Alex Wheel. It was 7-6 in the second set. I pulled it out, but I was feeling pretty good up until the end of that second set. And I think I was up 5-4, and then it was 6-all. And I was got pretty nervous
You go
then.
from not a worry in the world your freshman year to, hey, I don't want to screw this up.
Exactly. And I think that's where, for that, there was definitely a lot more pressure on me for that second state championship. And all the other tournaments I was playing, I respected the people I was playing so much that I knew that if I would try my absolute best, I would play my absolute best. And if I lost, that was the way that it would go. There was definitely pressure in that second state championship that got to me a little bit. There was, before my first state, I remember someone came up to me, a reporter for our local newspaper, and she said, "How excited are you to go into this tournament being the underdog?" And I think that was the moment that fully released all the pressure for me.
Ah,
I didn't necessarily feel I put a lot of pressure on myself. So I felt like I should be able to go and play my best and see if I can win. And I wanted to win the
yeah.
whole tournament. But I think that was where I said, oh, no one's expecting me to win. This is awesome. I can go and play whoever I want to play and see how it goes. And then that second year, whenever the newspaper started saying, are you nervous? Do you think you're going to take your second state title home? That kind of thing. That's when that started getting to me a little bit where, oh my gosh, now I have a precedent that I've set for myself.
Right.
How am I going to live up to this precedent? It's definitely a lot more nerve wracking the second year, but I was able
Yeah.
to pull it out.
It's amazing that as we talk through this, at this point, you're a 15, 16-year-old girl. Pressure of the world is already on your shoulder just to navigate life in general.
Mhm.
We talked about this before we hopped on, is like the magnification of the media and
Mhm.
some of these questions that you're being asked. It's a lot to take in.
Mhm.
And a lot of people don't realize that. And it's fascinating to me because I know you come from a background of elite sports long before the tennis court.
Yeah.
Is you were shredding the gnar on the mountain, right? As
Yeah.
a skier, you and your sister Morgan, you guys were downhill skiers. You were doing all the prerequisites to probably do big things on the ski
Yeah.
hill. And I just would love to hear how the ski hill helped you in those moments, your first 2 years of high school tennis.
My parents have asked me this a lot, but just the differences between tennis and skiing that were such a big factor in just how I competed in them. So Morgan and I both ski raced for Quantum Sports Club in Breckenridge. We were both GS skiers, and then I was just right at the point where I was going to start training for super giant slalom and possibly start training for Junior Olympics. But the thing about skiing is it's such a quick sport. So whenever you go, you have 2 to 3 minutes to give it your absolute all. You're racing against the clock, you're going down the mountain. When you're on the tennis court,
2 to 3 hours.
if you're losing, you're going to sit there and know it for 3 hours. And I think that's one of the things that taught me from a young age. I was playing tennis and I was skiing simultaneously. So I was able to see these differences just at the time. But in skiing, you're racing yourself at the end of the day. That was where I probably got that mentality of I'm going to go out there and I'm going to play my best. I'm going to do all the things that I need to do to be able to compete to the best of my abilities.
Who was a fiercer competitor than you in Colorado
It,
tennis? High school tennis. Who competed harder than you?
I think that all of the girls were pretty incredible competitors. Becca Wiseman, Nicole
Mm.
Callahan, Tate. We got really gritty on the court. We were all fighting our hardest out there. And I think that's honestly why we are so successful and have become successful in our lives, because
Yeah.
we all were so dedicated to not only winning but competing and being the best that we could be. And I think that was really helpful for me, especially because I was able to go out there in state championships and play these incredible players. There's definitely other states where you might not get quite as much of that, but luckily for me, I had some incredible competitors to play against in those, just even in this regular season. I remember I played Nicole Callahan on my birthday at Cheyenne Mountain, and we played for 3.5 hours. And I think I pulled it out 7-6 in the third, but just what a match to be playing on the Cheyenne Mountain tennis courts on your birthday. But yeah, but all of those girls are just such incredible competitors. I feel really fortunate to have been around when they were all competing as well.
Yeah, I love the gamesmanship, Kalyssa, because you guys all were competitive in your own different ways.
Mhm.
Some were more introverted, some were more extroverted. But
Yeah,
at the end of the day, you all competed hard and you would duke it out on the court. And there was
I might
mutual.
have been the most vocal, but
And that's what I can relate to as well, by the way, with my career. But here we are with you have this competitive pedigree from a downhill skiing background. You have your success at Cheyenne Mountain. You make a shift, a pretty hard shift that is not known from what I recall in Colorado high school tennis, of where someone goes from 4A school to a 5A school. You literally uproot your family dynamic
Mhm.
to go to Cherry Creek High School and compete at 5A. I'd love for you to walk the listeners through that transition and what was some of the reasoning behind making that shift, knowing you had bigger goals in your tennis career.
To be able to compete at the level that I wanted to compete at, almost everyone I knew was going to a tennis academy.
Yep.
My doubles partner was Morgan Cooley. She was from Boise. She was full-time at an academy from a lot of years before that. Tate went to
Tate went to
IMG.
Ballberry. Yeah,
Yeah.
IMG. And then I just had Jet Middleton on, who's a little younger than us, but we both knew Alex Middleton, his sister.
Yep.
He went to Advantage to
Yep.
get to where he's at today. It's a common theme for Colorado tennis players to either
Yeah.
go academy or something else. And you did this something else. And that's why I'm so excited for you to share
Yeah.
the unique path that you took.
One of the things that was the biggest factor in our Hall household was academics.
Yeah.
And both my parents are electrical engineers. They were not going to let me do online school no matter what. They wanted me in AP classes. They wanted me to have the ability to be in those advanced classes and be able to still get the education that I would be getting at Cheyenne Mountain and putting in the same amount of time that I would be putting into school at a real high school. Obviously, there are some really good online programs out there. I just don't think that they necessarily wanted to go that route with me for my education, just because it had always been a really important thing for them that I am in those advanced classes. I'm being challenged in school, and they never wanted to fully make tennis a priority over school, and they didn't want to set that precedent.
Okay. So when you're saying academics, and I know Cherry Creek has tremendous academics, you're saying pound for pound based off of what you were experiencing at Cheyenne Mountain, to have an opportunity to still have in-person, in the school moments and being in the metro area, that Cherry Creek was very comparable or maybe even exceeded some academic opportunities that you had in the South?
Yeah, I think that there was pretty comparable. Cheyenne Mountain's a little smaller than Cherry Creek, but I'd say they had pretty comparable classes. Going into your junior year, I was going to be taking probably 4 AP classes, and just being able to continue to take those classes, make sure that I still am getting the program that I would want to be taking to go into college with credits from AP tests and whatever it may be. Simultaneously, they wanted me to be able to continue to compete at the level that I wanted to compete at. And I was a sophomore. All of the boys that I had been hitting with in Colorado Springs had graduated. I got to the point where I was just hitting with my coaches, and it just wasn't really feasible. So the main reason that we really moved to Cherry Creek was so that I would be able to hit with Peter more and be in Peter's groups and be able to be in those lessons with more of my peers more a week. By the time that I transferred, we were driving up to Denver probably 4 or 5 times a week, which is hour drive both ways after school.
Don't send me that gas bill, Kalyssa, please.
Yeah, it was tough. That was honestly our biggest reasoning at that point, was just putting me in a place where I could get high level coaching and high level practice partners without being at an academy full time. And that's why we ended up doing it the way we did it. We had an apartment up in Denver that we were renting. Would go back and forth on the weekends. I would drive home sometimes for the weekends with my parents. One of them would be up in Denver with me. One of them would be in Colorado Springs with Morgan. It was a pretty chaotic time for us, but I understand why we did it. And I am so lucky that my parents were willing to do that for me, to allow me to continue to get the coaching and the practice that I needed. It was a pretty different route that we took there.
Yeah, it makes me think of after I graduated high school, I went to a tennis academy in Litchfield Park, Arizona. I had 2 coaches from Poland. They spoke 2 words of English, run and the S word. And I stayed in an old abandoned women's shelter because I
Wow.
couldn't pay to stay on the country club site.
Jeez.
And I just grinded 6 hours a day, 6 days a week.
Yeah.
At that point, I had to lose weight, lost 100 pounds in 13 months.
Wow. Wow. That's
And
incredible.
I walked on and played D1 tennis. And
Yeah.
this episode and this moment that we're having right now ain't about me, but I share this in context because this really builds up to what I believe is the most incredible moment in your story. As here you are as a 2-time state champion in 4A, representing a school that has a lot of history, a lot of lineage that you respected, and you got to represent that school at the highest level and reap the benefits. You get to go to a guy that I respect highly, had him on the podcast, Peter Richmond, who I believe even to this day is one of the best high performance coaches in Colorado. Kid,
Oh yeah.
he gives tremendously to the people that he tries to help. And I'm forever grateful for the moments that I had with him on the court, to where you were there simultaneously. With all of that said, you get to a point where you make that transition. Chaos is part of it. You have this history of what you've done, but now you're trying to go and do bigger things. You find yourself again in a state championship match. This time it's in front of a bigger audience than what you saw in Pueblo at Gates Tennis Center.
Yeah.
I would love for you to walk us through state championship 5A Kalyssa Hall. What comes to mind?
Overall, I think that was a Hard transition for me, honestly. I went from living in Colorado Springs my whole life to having a weird family dynamic. Obviously, my parents were incredible and doing absolutely the best they could, but just not getting to see both my parents all the time. That's definitely different. I was a junior in high school. I was trying to make new friends. I was in 4 AP classes. I just had a lot on my plate. I was playing with Peter. I was playing with the drills that he would run weekly. Going into that final, I just had a lot of pressure on me. I was beyond nervous.
No.
And I wanted to prove that I belonged there. To go from a school, I would argue, has just as big of a tennis legacy as Cherry Creek, to Cherry Creek, I wanted to show I can compete at this level. These are the same to me. I want to be on this team just as much as I wanted to be on that team. There was a little bit of a misconception that I was there to play for Cherry Creek, whereas I was playing for Cherry Creek because I was living in Denver to be with my coaches. I wanted to be with Peter and play with Peter as much as I could, and to play with Ethan Hillis when like Hayden Sabatka would hit with me at that point, that kind of thing. Going into that match, I was just beyond nervous. I felt sick. I just had so many people asking me if I could do it again, if I could win 5A, if I thought that I was going to win a third state championship, whether it be my friends or the people on the team or my teachers in general. I just was at a point where I was so nervous. I lost the ability to just play tennis the way that I know how to play tennis. I remember being out there and it was a really close match, but I was shaking. And all I wanted the whole match was to play normal. I just wanted to be able to play. I remember I was getting so mad at myself just because I could not relax. Like I was trying to just shake out my hands or all the things that I could not calm down. And I ended up losing that match. And it was one of the most intense matches I've probably ever played, but I was so nervous. I don't even know if it was necessarily coming from external sources or internal sources, if it was me that was putting this pressure on me, but I just wanted to like prove that I could do it so badly.
Who'd you play that junior year?
Amber Shin, yeah. And I just wish I had been able to play her the way that I knew I could, if that makes sense. That was a tough loss.
That match with Amber, it was magnified. There was a moment where, as we've gotten to this point in our conversation, where you and I both know that 99% of the people that were at Gates Tennis Center, that final match in 5A, had absolutely no idea what you'd been through to that point, what you've been through to get to that point. And we talked about this before we hopped on, is perception. Mm-hmm. And I remember vividly a moment in that match where it was heated. It was, call it controversial, whatever it is, but you're fighting for your life out there. You're trying to represent yourself to the best of your ability. This isn't going down a ski hill. This isn't being at Cheyenne Mountain. You're in new, uncharted territories with a lot of weight on your shoulders. And nobody, I repeat, nobody, being a dad of daughters myself, that any 17-year-old should ever have to have the feeling that you had. But here you are trying to handle it to the best of your ability. And I'd love for you to share that moment where it got heated, it got close at the end of that match.
Yeah.
What have you learned from that moment?
In the match, what happened was there were some calls that I was overruled on. I called the balls to the best of my ability. I was calling them in a way that I've always called the ball. And I was extremely nervous. It was a really close match, and these were really important points that I was getting overruled on. And at that point, I started questioning myself to a point that I had not reached before. I had played tennis for 10 years at that point. So the balls that I believed were out being overruled as not out was a hard thing to get over. And I know that There were so many people there. Maybe they thought it was out, maybe they thought it was in. I can't speak for other people.
No.
But being on the court at that moment as a 17-year-old, it was isolating.
Mm.
I was questioning, am I calling these balls wrong? What am I doing? How do I win this match? Do I play everything? Do I stop calling things out? I did stop calling things out. There were points where I remember there was a double fault that I just called it in because I just didn't even believe that I could call the ball the way that I knew. I didn't know if my contact was messed up. I didn't know what to do. And I knew I'm Cherry Creek at that point. No one really wanted Cherry Creek to win again. I think that
No.
they're rooting for the underdog, which is because I had my 2 state championships. Just at that point, as a 17-year-old, I was really confused, nervous, anxious. I was already nervous, and then now I don't know what's in or out. Did I forget how to play tennis? What am I doing? Like that kind of thing. But
This makes you want to have that moment back your freshman year, literally have that same Colorado Springs reporter come on the court during your 5A state championship match
yeah,
and interview you as the underdog.
yeah. But in that situation, I wasn't the underdog anymore. If I hadn't had that I didn't want to be the underdog. Having that prior success had made me who I was up until that point. So it was just a situation that I was gonna have to deal with no matter what. I learned a lot from that match. I know that you were there, and I know that you were watching the match as well.
And I was like, I don't know any 17-year-old that needs to go through this right now. I keep using the word perception, and I'll be honest. There's things that I've done as a coach and as a player to where there's a perception. And no matter how much you try to do the right thing,
Mhm.
and I think about you trying to make those calls, and I'm like, you're making those calls, but you have everybody else there making the call as well. And no
Mhm.
matter what you think the call is, the perception's going to be there. It's literally the epitome of a lose-lose situation. And I want to frame it that way, Kalyssa, because it's not just the match.
Mhm.
It's a lot of transition. It's a lot of sacrifice. It's a lot of what your parents did, what your family did, what you did to give
Mhm.
yourself this opportunity. It's very
Yeah.
important to make sure that we maintain that perspective despite the perception. And I think what's going to be really cool is that match result was the match result. Would it have been nice to be a 3-time state champion, 2-time in 4 and 1-time in 5A? Yeah, that would have been awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic. But what
Mhm.
is so awesome about your story, Kalyssa, is who you are today. Not
Mhm.
only did you go on and play Division I college tennis as a Gopher for Minnesota, but you're a woman of faith. You
Mhm.
have given back to so many people's lives in more ways than I could ever imagine. I'd love for you to share with the listeners what that moment at the 5A state championships has done to propel you to the woman that you are today.
Well, honestly, after that loss, I really had to take a step back and reevaluate where I was placing my worth. I was really upset about the loss. I was so excited that I had the opportunity to possibly be a 3-time state championship, like you said.
Yeah.
And I think that at that point, I realized how upset I was about the loss and how even being able to go out there and not feel like I played my best. It doesn't matter about the loss. It mattered more to me how I competed. I was so hurt by the situation, upset that I wasn't able to go out and compete to the best of my abilities and give my opponent the best match I possibly could. It started making me question I was placing my worth and what
Mm.
it was about me as an individual that made me who I am and what made me valuable in this world. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, but going into college, I played for University of Minnesota for 2.5 years. I Was involved in Athletes in Action, which is a Christian organization that we have here on campus. It's a pretty big throughout the United States. And I started being a Bible study leader and just delving into so many things that I just like pursuing different passions and just being able to figure out what my career would look like going forward. I ended up quitting tennis so that I could work in a group home and help people with disabilities. Honestly, just I think that moment in my tennis career made me see the bigger picture. And I would say that the biggest thing that I've learned in my life is when you're young and you're going through this sport. Tennis is a sport unlike a lot of sports because it is so individualized. You are competing against everybody else. Even your doubles partner, you might have to play in singles tournaments. USTA singles is the more important of the two. And you're training on your own. You're not ever always training with the same people because there aren't teams that you're playing on. You're not put on a team from the time that you're 6 and then pushed up through a team through high school. Because of that, and the way that tennis is, you have to hit thousands and thousands of balls to be your absolute best. There's so much time and so much energy spent on the sport from such a young age to become as good as you possibly can be. But at the end of the day, all of those skills that you're developing by being this elite athlete are the skills that are making you into the person who you're going to become. Like you get so immersed in being a tennis player. You're 14, you're a tennis player. You're 15, you're a tennis player. You're 18, you're still a tennis. That's what you do. You go to school, you play tennis for 4 hours, you come home and you do your homework, and then you go to bed and do it again. At the end of the day, there's so much more that you're learning by putting the dedication and effort and work ethic into that sport that are just going to develop you into who you're going to be one day. It's never your end all be all. You're never the people that you surround yourself with and the things that you do and the career that you have, the things that you love doing, your passions, those are the things that are going to fulfill you at the end of the day. And I'll say from personal experience, the person I am now, I would never be this person if I didn't have tennis. But I can look at it from the end of the tunnel. I can look back and think, I can't believe whenever I was 17 and I lost the state championship that I thought it was the end of the world. That diversity, it's a huge thing that I had to come to terms with at that age, being isolated like that, how I was going to get through it. They're all just skills that you're developing to be the best parent or person in the workforce or significant other that you can possibly be. And tennis is just a small part of that. That's where I really have come out of my tennis experience because I did feel like it was so much of who I was.
Your heart and how eloquent you were to share that. This is why I do the BTB project. When I started coaching Kalyssa, I wanted to be like a coach I never had. I wanted to be someone that fed positivity into people's lives instead of being fed negativity or self-doubt.
Yeah.
And when I came across you and your sister and really that Cheyenne Mountain tennis community, I just was so humbled and honored to even be a blip on the radar from what you were able to do as a tennis player. But having it be full circle to now, to where I've seen who you've become as a person, that's all I can ask for as a coach. We both know that tennis will end at a high level eventually for all of us.
Yeah.
And when it does, what do you do with it? And it makes me think of one last question. You become who you are now. You've changed a lot of people's lives.
Thanks.
You've had to get incredibly selfless to get to the perspective that you have today.
Thanks.
And walk me through it. You have your perspective. You have a moment before that match in the 5A state championships. And you, who you are today, could have a talk with 17-year-old Kalyssa Hall before that match. Knowing what you know now, what would you tell your 17-year-old self?
Might be controversial, but I think that I would just say it's just tennis. It's a
Yeah.
game. It's for fun. Like you're going to go out and hit the ball across the net. It's just the game that you love. And that was the thing that I lost sight of at that point, where it was about proving something or winning another state championship or being the best, going to college to play tennis. I had lost sight of just playing my sport. And that would be the thing that I would talk to myself about now and talk to any 17-year-old now that's playing tennis is it's you're playing it for fun. You're playing it to be the best that you can be. But every single skill that you're developing right now is going to make you into the person that you are. I have 3 different jobs now, and I can handle that perfectly because I play tennis. And I am competitive in board games because I play tennis. I need things on my plate because everything that I have become are all just in little ways this sport that's in my past that was such a huge part of who I am. And it's so common to be so immersed in the high school world and so immersed in this sport because there's so much time and energy put into it that sometimes you have to take a step back and understand, why am I playing this sport? I'm playing this sport because I love this sport. If I'm not, then I don't need to play this sport anymore. And the only way, that was the big thing for me, is freshman and sophomore year, I loved tennis. Competing was what I lived for. And then I lost sight of that. The only thing that my life now has to do with tennis is just like my work ethic and my attitude and my competitiveness, but I don't play tennis anymore. That's just the biggest thing. It's just understanding that it's developing you into the person that you're going to be, and it's allowing you to do that in a safe environment.
I'll tell you what, I'm pumped up and encouraged by those words of wisdom, even for myself. And I got young kids. I can't wait to have your story, your words pay forward to help them. Kalyssa
Thanks.
Hall, it's been an unbelievable pleasure to walk through your journey. I'm so proud of who you are, who you've become, even in those moments in the trenches, for you to
Thanks.
keep your head up, for you to persevere, for you to overcome. I say often, impossible is nothing. And you absolutely are a byproduct of that. Thank you for spending some time with me today on the BTB project.
Thanks for taking the time to talk to me. This was incredible.
Absolutely. What a remarkable journey we just went on, and learning the lessons that Kalyssa was able to learn throughout her tennis career, and more importantly, how she's paying it forward. There are so many takeaways from the moment of one of her toughest matches that she played, to where it really defined what her purpose and calling and identity was in her life. And for you as a listener, I want you to think about some of those difficult circumstances that you're currently facing. There are many obstacles, roadblocks, setbacks that come up on a daily basis. And it's how we respond and how we frame those moments into something that can propel us into doing something extraordinary. Listen, if this episode inspired you, do me a favor, like and subscribe to the BTB Project. Better yet, send the episode over to a friend, family member, or colleague and let them know why it impacted you. It's these types of stories that allow us to understand what we're capable of, and more importantly, to keep paying the BTB mission forward. I'm proud of each and every one of you. And until next time, take care.
You're told I'll be your heart, temptation.